Good Lord, what on earth is that? Is she bringing flowers? Mary's voice quavered as she watched the video on Helen's cell phone, her eyes wide with astonishment. The shaky footage showed a black cat climbing through the window with a delicate pink flower between its teeth, moving with an almost supernatural purpose toward the bed. The silence in the room was broken only by Helen's held breath as she recorded this impossible moment. A wild animal that, against all logic, was collecting and offering floral gifts like some mysterious ritual. She's been doing this for weeks now, Helen whispered. What do you suppose she's trying to tell me with this? This story goes deeper than it appears. Please subscribe to our channel now and tell us in the comments which you prefer. Do you like dogs or cats better? Autumn was painting the streets with shades of amber and crimson when Helen began to notice something unusual on her porch. The gentle breeze of that particularly mild season carried not just dried leaves, but also a mystery that would soon change her life forever. Helen lived alone in a modest house on the outskirts of a small town. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other by name, where mornings were marked by birdsong rather than the noise of car horns. Her routine was simple and predictable. Wake up early, work at the town library during the day, and return at dusk to the tranquility of her home. On a Wednesday like any other, upon returning from work, Helen noticed something different on her porch. Small pink petals were delicately scattered near the entrance, as if someone had placed them there deliberately. Must be just the wind, she muttered to herself, sweeping the petals into the garden before entering. The next day, however, the phenomenon repeated itself. This time they weren't just loose petals, but a small cluster of them, almost like an improvised bouquet, positioned right next to the welcome mat. How peculiar, thought Helen, examining the flowers with curiosity. They didn't appear to have been simply blown by the wind. They were so neatly placed that they seemed to have been left by someone. In the days that followed, the floral gifts continued to appear, always left in the same spot, always with the same mysterious care. Helen began to develop theories. Could it be some neighborhood child playing tricks? Perhaps a secret admirer with an unusual approach? Or maybe an eccentric neighbor trying to be friendly? Mary, you won't believe what's happening at my house, Helen remarked during lunch with her coworker. Someone's leaving flowers at my door. Every single day, I never see who it is. It might be Mrs. Carmen's son, suggested Mary between sips of tea. That boy has always been a bit different, but Helen wasn't convinced. There was something about this mystery that touched her deeply, as if the flowers were silent messengers of something greater that was yet to come. On the morning of the 15th day of that strange ritual, Helen decided to unravel the mystery. She woke up earlier than usual, prepared her coffee, and positioned herself strategically near the kitchen window, with the curtains partially drawn, giving her a perfect view of the porch without being noticed. The wait was shorter than she had anticipated. When the clock showed 7:32, a subtle movement caught her attention. From between the shrubs that separated her garden from the street emerged a small, nimble figure, a short-haired black cat, delicately carrying a freshly picked camellia flower between its teeth. Helen held her breath, fearing that any movement might scare away the mysterious visitor. With silent, precise steps, the cat approached the door, placed the flower exactly in the same spot as always, and then sat a few feet away, as if contemplating its offering. What impressed Helen most wasn't just the gesture itself, but the almost solemn expression of the cat. Its green eyes, attentive and profound, fixed on the door as if waiting for someone to acknowledge its gift. There was an intelligence in that gaze, an intention that went beyond common animal behavior. Good heavens, Helen whispered to herself. It's you who's been leaving the flowers. The cat, as if it had heard the whisper, turned its head slightly toward the window. For a brief moment, their gazes met through the glass in the semi-transparent curtain. Helen felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from a strange sensation of recognition, as if this small creature had chosen her house for some specific reason. After a few minutes of mutual observation, the cat rose with elegance, cast one last look at the deposited flower, and silently disappeared among the shrubs, leaving behind not just a flower, but a mystery even greater than Helen could imagine. In the days following her discovery, Helen began to observe her visitor with growing fascination. The cat would appear almost always at the same time, between late afternoon and early dusk, when shadows stretched across the garden and the sky was tinged with orange hues. You're quite a peculiar little creature, aren't you? Helen murmured, watching through the window as the cat placed another camellia flower beside the door. What intrigued Helen most was the apparent health of the animal. Unlike common stray cats, its dark coat gleamed in the sunlight, with no signs of injuries or malnourishment. It wore no collar, but its graceful and precise movements suggested it wasn't completely wild. After a week of silent observation, Helen decided to take a step further. On a particularly pleasant Thursday, she purchased a small, colorful bowl and a package of the most premium cat food she could find at the pet store. "If she keeps bringing me gifts, the least I can do is return the favor," she explained to Mary, who listened to her stories about the cat with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. That afternoon, Helen placed the bowl with cat food near the spot where the cat always left the flowers. She hid behind the curtain and waited, her heart beating a little faster than normal. The visitor arrived punctually, carrying another camellia flower. Upon noticing the bowl, she stopped abruptly. Her green eyes alternated between the container and the door, as if assessing whether it represented a threat or an invitation. Cautiously, she approached, sniffing the air. She placed the flower in its usual spot and, after a few moments of hesitation, sniffed the food. She ate a few pieces, always alert, before backing up a few steps and sitting down, observing the house with that penetrating gaze that so fascinated Helen. "Welcome," whispered Helen, feeling a strange connection with this small being that, for some mysterious reason, had chosen her house for its floral offerings. In the days that followed, the ritual repeated itself, but with a crucial difference. The cat's wariness gradually diminished. Each day she ate a little more, stayed a little longer, and her gaze, previously always vigilant, began to show something that Helen could only describe as trust. It was the beginning of a silent friendship, woven with flowers and small gestures of mutual care, neither of them able to predict where it would lead them. As the weeks passed, the ritual between Helen and the mysterious cat transformed into a delicate dance of growing closeness. Helen began placing the food bowl a little nearer to the door each day, and the cat, in turn, lingered longer after her meals. "I believe we're making headway," Helen remarked to herself, observing how the feline now comfortably lounged on the porch step after eating, calmly licking her paws. On a particularly sunny late autumn afternoon, Helen decided to risk more direct contact. She sat in the wicker chair on the porch with a book in her lap, pretending to read while waiting for her visitor. When the cat appeared, carrying a small flower, she hesitated upon seeing Helen there. "Hello there," Helen said softly without making any sudden movements. "No need to be frightened. You can leave your gift as usual." To her surprise, after a few moments of assessment, the cat approached. She placed the flower in its customary spot and, maintaining a safe distance, observed Helen with those intense green eyes. "You truly are special, you know that?" Helen murmured, slowly extending her hand with a treat. "I've never seen a cat bring flowers before." The cat sniffed the air, took 2 hesitant steps toward Helen, and, in a gesture that made the woman's heart quicken, delicately took the treat from her hand. It was a brief moment, but a meaningful one. A first touch, a first sign that trust was being built. In the days that followed, Helen began talking to the cat, telling her about her day at the library, about the books she was reading, about the loneliness she sometimes felt in that house too big for just one person. "Perhaps you're lonely too," Helen reflected one afternoon, while the cat, now more comfortable, ate peacefully just a few steps away from her. "Is that why you bring me flowers? To keep me company?" The cat raised her eyes as if understanding every word, and Helen felt that their silent connection was blossoming into something much deeper than she could ever have imagined. One day, a storm arrived with unexpected ferocity for that normally mild region. The trees, previously colored by autumn, now bent under the force of the cold, cutting wind that also whistled through the cracks of Helen's windows. On that particularly frigid night, the sky had darkened earlier than usual, bringing with it heavy clouds that promised the season's first frost. Helen had lit the fireplace and retired to her bedroom, nestling under heavy quilts with a cup of hot tea and a novel she had borrowed from the library. "I hope she's found somewhere warm," she thought, looking through the foggy window. The cat hadn't appeared that day, and Helen felt a twinge of concern. In recent weeks, her visits had become so regular that her absence created an almost tangible emptiness. Moved by a hopeful impulse, Helen got up and opened part of the bedroom window, just enough to allow a small animal to pass through, but not so much that it would freeze the room. "If she comes, she'll have a way in," she murmured to herself, returning to bed and adjusting the covers. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 9:23 when Helen heard it. At first, she thought it was just the wind through the trees, but the sound repeated, a low, almost hesitant meow, coming from the direction of the partially open window. Helen's heart quickened. With swift movements, she grabbed her cell phone from the nightstand and activated the camera. She came, she whispered to herself, pointing the lens toward the window, wanting to record this moment that, somehow, she knew was special. The curtains swayed gently and, with delicate steps, the feline jumped from the window to the floor, and then, with a fluid movement, climbed onto the bed. Helen held her breath, fearing that any sudden movement might frighten away the visitor. The cat approached slowly, her eyes fixed on Helen's, and then, in a gesture of absolute trust, placed the flower on the sheets, very close to Helen's hand. "You came," whispered Helen, continuing to film while the cat observed the surroundings with that characteristic dignity that so fascinated her. "Thank you for the gift," Helen murmured, too moved to say anything else. As if that were the signal she had been waiting for, the cat settled on the bed, curling up in a comfortable position near Helen's feet. Her eyes, previously vigilant, now slowly closed, as if she could finally relax. Helen turned off the phone camera, knowing she had captured a precious moment, the exact moment when a visitor became family. Carefully, so as not to disturb the sleeping cat, she pulled a bit more of the comforter, creating a small nest for them both. "Welcome to your new home," she whispered, knowing somehow that this night marked the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. The days that followed brought a new routine to Helen's house. The cat, who now answered to the name Mealy, short for Melissa, inspired by the flowers she so loved to gather, had completely adapted to the domestic environment. She no longer showed any intention of leaving, exploring every corner of the house as if mapping her new territory. "Looks like you've decided to stay for good, haven't you?" Helen commented, watching as Melly stretched lazily on the living room rug, bathed in the golden winter sunlight streaming through the window. It was during one of these peaceful afternoons that Helen noticed something different. While stroking Melly's soft fur, her fingers detected a subtle change in the contour of the cat's body. Her belly, previously slender, now presented a gentle curve, almost imperceptible to less attentive eyes. "Could it be?" Helen murmured to herself, examining the cat more carefully. In the days that followed, her suspicion grew. Melly slept more than usual, chose quiet and cozy spots around the house, and her belly was definitely more rounded. Helen, who had never owned a cat before, turned to books and websites confirming her suspicions. "I think we need to visit a veterinarian, my dear," said Helen, gently stroking Melly's head, who purred in response. Dr. Louise, the only veterinarian in the small town, received Helen and Melly at her cozy clinic on a Thursday morning. After a careful examination, she confirmed what Helen already suspected. "Congratulations," said the veterinarian with a gentle smile. "Your cat is pregnant, and from what I can tell, already in quite an advanced stage. She'll likely have her kittens within 2 to 3 weeks." The news hit Helen like a wave. Surprise, concern, and surprisingly, a deep joy she hadn't expected to feel. "So that's why you chose my house," she whispered to Melly on the way back, finally understanding the cat's behavior. "You were looking for a safe place not just for yourself, but for your little ones." That revelation brought new meaning to the relationship between the two. It wasn't just a cat who had adopted a human, it was a mother-to-be who, with impressive instinct, had carefully chosen the home where her family could grow in safety. Helen transformed into a different person in the weeks that followed. With a determination she didn't even know she possessed, she immersed herself in books about cat care, feline birth, and raising kittens. The guest room, previously empty and lifeless, gained a special purpose. "This will be your special corner, Mealy," said Helen, showing the cat the cardboard box she had carefully lined with soft blankets and clean towels. Surprisingly, Melly seemed to understand. She sniffed the prepared spot, entered the box, turned around a few times, and lay down, as if approving Helen's work. That small gesture of acceptance filled the woman's heart with an inexplicable joy. The days passed in a mixture of anticipation and preparation. Helen purchased small cloth toys, extra bowls, and an amount of special food for pregnant cats that made the pet store clerk raise her eyebrows. "First time, isn't it?" asked the young woman with an understanding smile. Melly, for her part, appeared increasingly at ease. Her belly was now visible even from a distance, and her movements had become slower and more calculated. On cold afternoons, she sought Helen's lap, lying across her legs while the woman read or watched television, purring softly as if thanking her for the security provided. It was in the early hours of Thursday morning, when the clock showed 3:17, that Helen awoke to a low, persistent sound. Muffled meows were coming from the guest room. Her heart instantly quickened. The moment had arrived. With hurried but silent steps, Helen made her way to the room. There was Melly, already positioned in the box, her green eyes shining in the dim light with a mixture of concentration and serenity. "I'm right here," whispered Helen, sitting on the floor near the box, respecting the cat's space. The hours that followed were a lesson in life that Helen would never forget. With impressive calmness, Melly brought 4 small kittens into the world, 2 with dark gray stripes and 2 mottled gray and white. Each birth was followed by a meticulous cleaning ritual, with Melly licking each kitten until it began to move and emit tiny sounds. Helen observed everything with silent tears streaming down her face, marveled at the miracle of life unfolding before her eyes. Helen's house was completely transformed in the weeks that followed. The silence that once dominated the rooms gave way to a symphony of meows, purrs, and tiny paws scampering across the wooden floor. Melly's 4 kittens grew healthy and full of energy, each developing distinct personalities that delighted Helen. "You little whirlwinds," she laughed, watching as the kittens explored every corner, climbed the curtains, and played with any object they found along the way. The most surprising thing, however, was observing Melly as a mother. The cat who had once mysteriously appeared with flowers in her mouth now showed absolute dedication to her kittens. She taught them to clean themselves, to use the litter box Helen had purchased, and even to hunt, using stuffed toys as improvised prey. Curiously, even with all her new responsibilities, Melly didn't abandon her peculiar habit. On sunny mornings, when the kitten slept after a nursing session, she would briefly escape to the garden and return minutes later with a fresh flower between her teeth, carefully placing it near the sleeping kittens. "It's as if you want them to appreciate the beauty of flowers too," remarked Helen, touched by such a singular gesture. As the kittens grew, Helen faced a dilemma. Her house, though welcoming, couldn't properly accommodate 5 cats. With a heavy heart, but aware of her responsibility, she began looking for loving homes for the little ones. "I promise to find families who will love you as much as I do," she whispered to the kittens while playing with them on the porch, under Melly's watchful eye. With extreme care and discernment, Helen selected trustworthy people, close friends and colleagues from the library, who had shown genuine interest in the ability to properly care for the kittens. The interviews she conducted with potential owners made Mary, her coworker, laugh affectionately. "You look like you're interviewing candidates for high-responsibility positions, not for adopting kittens," she teased. "Isn't that exactly what I'm doing?" Helen replied, seriously. "I'm entrusting lives to these people." The goodbyes were difficult. Each kitten that left took a small piece of Helen's heart with it. What surprised her, though, was Melly's reaction. The cat observed the departures with an almost philosophical serenity, as if understanding that this was the natural course of life. On the night when the last kitten left the house, Helen prepared herself to console Melly. However, to her surprise, the cat jumped on the bed, settled beside her, and, for the first time, spent the entire night purring softly next to her, as if saying, "My mission is complete. Thank you for taking us in." The next morning, Helen found a small lavender flower on her pillow, Melly's offering of gratitude. Before we continue, please respond here in the comments. Have you ever experienced something inexplicable like this with an animal? We would love to hear your story. And if you're fond of animals, click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Together, let's reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. When you subscribe, you help us continue posting stories that can influence this world to take better care of our animals. I'll give you a moment to like and subscribe. Now, picture a majestic elephant under the dramatic skies of India, standing beside his companion who is facing a challenging birth. Deep in the heart of the forest, the atmosphere is heavy with tension. A respectful silence accompanies the moment. With each passing second, the shadow of uncertainty grows, and suddenly the caretakers are filled with wonder. Their expressions oscillate between terror and fascination, frozen and unable to process what their eyes are witnessing. Are you ready to feel every emotion of this story? Click now on the video appearing on your screen and join this extraordinary journey. Unforgettable adventures are always just one click away. I'll see you in the next video.